So I need to know what is the inverse of f and g. This is going to take a little bit of work. So I'm going to start by figuring out first what is the inverse, and that will help me as I go through this. So the inverse of f. Well, in order to figure out the inverse of f, first think of this as a y. So I'm going to switch the x and y. So I switch, this is like a y, switch the x and y, and now I want to isolate the y. I'm going to subtract 2 to the opposite side. And then to get rid of this, I'm going to take the cube root. Now there's a couple different ways you could represent this. One is you could take it to the 1/3 power like I'm doing it. So the inverse of f could be written like this. That's one way to write it, and that's in rational exponent form, or another way to write it looks like this. They are equivalent forms. This is radical, this is rational exponent. Either one of these for the inverse is fine. I need to know that before I can go ahead and do any of the problems with number 2. Let's go the inverse of g. So inverse of g, as we do it here, I'm going to switch the x and y. This was like a y, I'm going to make it an x. Y plus 3 over 2. Okay, let's isolate the y. I'm going to multiply by 2 to both sides. So 2x equals y plus 3. Now subtract 3 and I get 2x minus 3 equals y. So this is the inverse of g. So g inverse is 2x minus 3. If you prefer working with radicals, think of these two. All right, how is that going to help us as we work through number 2? Number 1. Again, like this is a little more confusing to me in that form, but it means the same as this. It means x inverse, g inverse, and 16. Now the way I like it like this, because it means I'm going to take the inverse of g and I'm going to plug it into f. If you're looking in this form, we're going to take g and plug it backwards into f. So let's first start by writing down what is the inverse of f. Okay, inverse of f, I'm going to write this down. So we have cube root, and then it's x minus 2. Wherever there's a variable, you're going to put a blank spot there. Wherever there's a variable, you can put a blank spot. So this is the f. This is the f. Now into that, I'm going to plug in the inverse of g. The inverse of g is 2x minus 3. So this would be 2, I'm going to do it really lightly, x minus 3. But I don't actually want to leave an x there. It says to substitute in 16. So in this position, I put in a 16. Okay, here we go. 2 times 16 is 32. 32 minus 3 is 29. 29 minus 2 is 27. Cube root of 27. Now, if you're a little confused how to plug this in, let's practice together really quickly. Some of you already know. This just means what times itself 3 times equals 27. If you don't know that, grab your calculator and learn how to plug this in quickly, please. Hit math. Go all the way down to number 4. Now type in 27 and we can see we get an answer of 3. This answer is 3. Okay, the next one. Again, I prefer, it's just because of how I was trained to write this. I prefer to write it like this. It's just another form. But you don't have to. It means the exact same thing. So it means we're going to start by writing the inverse of g. Okay, so I will go back and the inverse of g is 2x minus 3. So I'm going to write down 2x minus 3, but wherever there's a variable, I'm going to leave it blank. So I just wrote this down. Now, inside of this blank spot, I need to write down what is the inverse of g, and then I'm going to substitute in a 2 for the x. So I'm going to put 2x minus 3 in this position, 2x minus 3, and where there was the variable x, I'm going to substitute in a 2. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 minus 3, the inside here is 1. 2 times 1 is 2, and 2 minus 3 is negative 1. At option C. So again, I'm going to start by writing, this to me looks like this. So I'm going to write down what the inverse of g is, which is 2x minus 3. Wherever there's a variable here, I'm going to leave it blank. And now I'm going to plug in the inverse of f. Okay, inverse of f is the cube root of x minus 2. But wherever there is an x, I need to plug in the numerical value 10. 10 minus 2 is 8. Now, if you did not know this, the cube root of 8 is 2. But if not, you're going to hit math, go down to number 4, type in 8, and we can see the answer is 2. So I have 2 times 2 minus 3, which is 4 minus 3. The answer is 1. The answer is positive 1. Let's go ahead and let's look at number 9. Number 9. Okay, so now this says first plug F into G. So it says first plug F into G, and then find the inverse afterwards. Plug F into G, and then afterwards find the inverse. Okay, so I'm going to first start by writing down what G is. So G, for this normal G, there's no inverse involved right there. Normal G is x plus 3 over 2. Okay, that's the normal one. Where there would be a variable in G, I'm leaving it blank, and now I'm going to substitute into that what F is, which is x cubed plus 2. Now, after I simplify this, I'm going to find the inverse. So I have x cubed plus 5 over 2. Let's find the inverse of this function. So I'm going to switch the x and y. So I have x equals y cubed plus 5 over 2. And now let's isolate for the y. Times 2 times 2. 2x equals y cubed plus 5. I'm going to subtract 5 to the opposite side to get 2x minus 5. And now there's a couple different ways we can get rid of this, but you have now learned you can do the cube root. So the cube root and y cubed, you think of them as canceling out. Really, they're reduced down to a 1. And then this is my answer, cube root of 2x. Oops, sorry, it should be minus 5. 2x minus 5. There's nothing more you can do with this. First, we've already identified the inverse of G and F before we even started number 2. And it says we always start here. I like to rewrite this, but you don't have to. We're plugging in the second one into the first. So I write down the first one, and wherever there's a variable, which is right here, I'm leaving it blank. And then I'm substituting in the second one. So I'm substituting F into this, and I can't distribute through. There's nothing more I can do. Okay, let's look at letter F. So I'm going to write down normal F, which is x cubed plus 2. And that's the outside. And now I'm going to plug in the inverse. So the inverse of G is 2x minus 3. Now, he left it like this. For a final answer, when I'm looking at Mr. McFarland's, he says you don't have to multiply all of that out. If you would go through and do this 3 times, if you go through and do this 3 times by distributing and then distribute again, I wouldn't count it wrong. But he is showing that you can leave your final answer in this form.